Good afternoon and welcome back to College Football on Tap, brought to you by the On Tap Sportsnet. I'm your host, Chris White, joined alongside with Bruno Oger. What's going on, Bruno? How you feeling today?
Good man. You know how it is. Another work week about to start, and I've been feeling sick for quite some time now. I'm feeling like crap. I was feeling like crap on Saturday morning, as you could hear. I don't know if my voice sounds any better or if I'm even more nasally today. Like I'm just not recovering at all. But whatever. Got to get through what we got to get through. But yeah, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Longer-ish weekend, I guess. At least it felt like it, but just kind
Yeah.
of laying on my couch watching football like every other weekend and doing my best to relax and recuperate for the week coming up.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah, very interesting week in college football for sure. It's getting down to the itty gritty here. We're down to the last 3 weeks of the regular season, and then on to the championship week for a lot of the conferences that have their championship games. And honestly, despite the craziness of the week, I don't know if anything is getting solved in terms of where we're going to be come the college football playoff, because it just seems like there's so many different teams that are available for it, and five undefeated teams at this point, and then a lot of one-loss teams that are making cases and for them to be there as well when one of these other teams go down. I mean, Oregon and Alabama, obviously Alabama getting the win against LSU, which we'll talk about. And if we wanted to, we could kind of start off right there with Alabama and LSU.
Yeah, let's jump right into it right there. I kind of didn't see this coming. I was really arguing with myself before the game had started. Like, obviously, we had talked about like lesser of two evils, Brian Kelly or Alabama winning, but I admittedly turned on Washington USC. I just thought that was a better game, so I kind of just stared that way. But from what I watched, most of the first or all the first quarter, some of the second, LSU looked like a good squad, and until Jaden Daniels got his bell rung and knocked out.
Yeah, I wasn't able to watch most of the game because I went and seen Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks play that night for my
Connor
fiance's
Bedard.
birthday. But I was obviously looking through, and I kept on texting you and Ross and our buddy Zach, and was just like, oh man, like right away I was seeing what Jaden Daniels was doing, and I was like, oh man, he is that dude. Like, and I was sitting there getting ready to hype up a lot of Heisman talk for him, because I was just like, oh, LSU's coming out strong, he's looking good. I mean, he ran the ball a lot. As I think he had 160 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown, but that didn't matter because Milrow had 150 yards rushing and four of them for touchdowns. So, kind of a different kind of game there for Alabama and their quarterback, Jalen Milrow, as he was able to take over the game via the run game. I've been looking at a lot of stat lines over the past few weeks when Alabama's played, just, going through them quickly, not paying hard attention, but I know that he runs, but he hasn't run like that. And it was obviously a difference maker in the way that game went down. And the fact that Alabama now is still in talks for the college football playoff and LSU
Goddamn
takes their
playoff
third loss.
contention.
Yeah. I mean, is it worth it though for, Brian Kelly to get that loss? And I was looking at yesterday, going through the ESPN bowl projections, and one of the ESPN bowl projections has Notre Dame versus LSU in some
Yeah,
random bowl game at the end
I
of the
saw
year.
that Notre Dame like a half-point favorite.
Yeah, so Notre Dame versus LSU, that pipe dream game might be available after both of those teams losing this weekend.
I don't really think I want that because I cannot stand the fact that it's possible Notre Dame loses to that Brian Kelly team.
Yeah, I know. After watching the Irish play on Saturday, obviously that was where my most intention was throughout the day of watching. I paid the most attention to, but after Notre Dame losing that game, yeah, it does make me fear that a game against LSU might really put a damper on our mood in terms of even heading into next season. But yeah, I mean, the way that this game kind of broke down, it looked early like it was going to be a fight to the end, but Alabama was the much better team for throughout the second half, putting up 21 points in the second half compared to the 7 that LSU did. Um, and Jaden Daniels not being able to play the whole entire game, taking a hit, having to bring in their backup quarterback Neusmeyer, uh, just wasn't a very good thing for LSU. I mean, it could have ended up differently if Jaden Daniels was able to play throughout, but that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. And Alabama was a very strong defensive team coming into this. You kind of figured that this might be on the way that the scoring ended up playing out 42-28. It's kind of what I think you expect it to be in terms of an LSU Alabama matchup.
Yeah.
Go
I was thinking a little closer. I was still thinking 2 scores, but more along the lines of a touchdown and a field goal, and a little bit higher in the scoring department. But yeah, it boiled down to pretty much what we were thinking.
Yeah, I mean,
Neusmeyer, though, like I had said, I didn't watch too much of the second half of that game, and I know that you weren't paying too much attention with being at the Hawks game. Neusmeyer only had 10 attempts and nothing on the ground. So if I had to guess, Daniels went down probably somewhere around the fourth quarter, mid third.
Yeah, I like I said, it was a very I was not able to keep up with it the whole entire time, and I kind of just saw that Alabama pulled away, and I saw the message come through that Daniels was knocked out of the game there. So it could have been late in the third quarter. I mean, even though like Daniels had only 24 attempts in the game. I mean, granted he ran the ball 11 times, but and I know that's not very good of us to not really know what it freaking happened, but it's just nonetheless, you see the way that the game kind of got carried away there in the second half. Like it kind of didn't have that attention that the USC Washington game did have, because those teams were scoring back and forth like crazy, and there was no
Yes,
defense.
sir.
Kind of expected no defense game. Like if USC was going to win, they were going to have to keep on scoring, but scoring 42 wasn't even enough with the way USC's defense is.
Yeah, I know we had been texting about the over, and you're like, I don't know, man, 70 something's a lot of points.
Yeah,
There's a
there
lot
was
of football left.
76 point over under on that game. That was a lot of points to ask for. I'm like, well, what if USC struggles and Washington's defense does play good? I mean, then we're not going to see it happen at all. So,
Yeah, like Washington putting up 4 scores in the second quarter alone.
yeah. I mean,
Pretty well. I mean, and just to think, they're only up 35-28 going into half. Like,
yeah, I
you got
literally
30 more minutes of this.
I literally was just kind of looking back and forth at the score, and I was just like, oh, they scored. And I mean, it would take, how commercial breaks are with hockey games. They go pretty quickly. It's like, okay, they're at the 12-minute mark. Next whistle is going to be the first commercial break, and then we'll kind of go from there. And it was more or less just like, I guess it just got to the point, even at halftime, I kind of felt like Washington was going to win. But then the last I looked, I saw USC was scoring in the third quarter, and USC had I don't know if they take the lead or they tied it up at 42. Yeah, USC tied it up at 42 there in the third quarter.
And then the Huskies ran away with 10 more points in the fourth to solidify their victory.
Yeah, so no points from USC in the fourth quarter. And that's kind of what it comes down to, as every other quarter was just points after points after points, possession after possession, for the most part. Michael Penix Jr. Getting the job done this time with his team, but I wouldn't say that it was just because I wouldn't say it was mainly because of his skills at quarterback. I would say it was just more or less that the offense was able to do anything that they wanted on both sides of the ball. They had 256 rushing yards from running back Dylan Johnson, 256 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. USC not being able to stop the ground game whatsoever. I don't think this is going to help the case for Michael Penix's hopes of Heisman, but it's definitely going to help the case for Washington getting into the college football playoff.
Yeah, no, I mean this is one step closer to getting them there. But I mean, 256 and 2 touchdowns. He did throw a pick, but that's not by any means a bad stat line. He just didn't, raise any eyebrows this week.
No,
Caleb Williams, on the other hand, did everything he absolutely could to keep his team in the game, throwing for over 303 touchdowns. And, Williams always doing something on his feet, 10 attempts for only 16 yards, but still moving the ball around.
Yeah, Caleb Williams, after the game had to be consoled by his mom. He was having a hard time there, crying, breaking down. And I sat there and I felt very like, oh, man. There was 2 thoughts that came to my mind. One, it's not your fault. Like you're doing everything you can. Your defense is the worst defense in the country.
Atrocious.
It's unbelievable how bad they are. And then
you give them Ohio State or Utah or Georgia's defense or Penn State's defense.
Yeah,
I don't even think it would be close.
Yeah, no.
I mean, as an offensive juggernaut, you contain teams to less than 20 points per game. It wouldn't even be close in the playoff.
Yeah, no. USC is literally one-dimensional, and if they even had a semi-decent defense, like we would probably be talking about them a lot differently at this time of year. But it kind of like there was questions that like Ross brought to us on Saturday, saying like if Caleb Williams cares enough for this game, and I'm like, I don't think that's been a question for Caleb Williams at all, is if he cares. I think he cares a lot. Like he wanted to win a national championship at USC to cement his legacy. He wanted to do more than just win a Heisman. I think that's why you see such a distraught kid on the sidelines. The second thought that I had with this though was, kid, like you don't want to come to Chicago. Like you don't want to be a Bear, and because if you cry and you're a Bear, like we already we hate the way it is as Bears fans here. Like it's not fun to be a Bears fan. It's just a way of torturing ourselves even more. On
you just grew up in the wrong area, and now you're stuck with this shit for life.
Yeah, I mean, and we're very, very high emotional. We will jump on your ass for anything type of fan base, and this fan base will rip you apart if you don't have your emotions in check. And like, trust me, I don't have a problem with you crying on the sideline. I'm not thinking anything less of you because that's how emotional you are. I know that I cry a lot. I get emotional about things, and I don't think I'm any less of a man just because I'm very emotional and I tie a lot of things to my heart. So I feel that. I understand having that kind of mindset, but it's not going to work well for you on national TV for in front of this fan base and whatnot. So I that's just the only thing that I'm thinking of. I'm like, man, this guy's going to end up going through therapy because of what he might go through if he ended up getting drafted by the Bears. You better go to like Tennessee or something where they're not going to be as hard on you.
Yeah, well, it's okay, kid. We'll try it again next Sunday.
Yeah, like it won't work that well here. So
what I had noticed was obviously that news came out a couple months ago about his dad saying if he'll play another year of college ball if he doesn't like where he's getting drafted.
Yeah.
And when he went up to the stands after the game and he was kind of being consoled by his mother, all you saw in the background was his dad, like from a distance, like patting his back gently. Like it seems like there's a Colt McCoy to his father type of disconnect there, or a LeVar Ball to Alonzo Ball sort of deal.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that that's not the case where his dad's going to be a big influence in terms of what's happening in terms of the background noise for his future. Because I mean, even when Lonzo came into the Bulls, like I was kind of just like, oh man, like I really don't want to hear this shit all the time. Like
I think Lonzo had it a little easier telling his dad to shut the hell up than like Colt McCoy did, though.
Yeah, for sure. Because
Colt McCoy's like a 10-year backup veteran in the NFL, like, and his dad's still over there, like, tuck in your shirt. You look like a slob. Like, come on, Colt, you're 32 years old.
Right, his dad's still holding out hope that he's going to lead a team to a Super Bowl. So,
yeah, he's just there. Like, he's the guy that's praying for the quarterback to get injured so he could hop in there and save the game.
Something that we should mention is that the defensive coordinator, the Grinch, defensive coordinator Grinch, was fired from USC after the game. He was fired at some point yesterday. The message came across, and I messaged you right away and says it was a little bit too late for this.
Too little, too late.
Granted, they play Oregon next week, so that would be a fun game for them to go out there and get the win. But
they're going to be out there with a whole new scheme. Like, some guy's just going to come in and they're going to end up giving up 70. Hammer the over next week.
So, yeah, not a great weekend for the Trojans by any means, but a good weekend for Washington to keep their hopes alive in the college football playoff. It could be very interesting to see when it gets down, like if Ohio State beats Michigan or Michigan beats Ohio State and Michigan doesn't get any penalties or sanctions or anything before this, or God even knows anymore with Michigan. But, if whoever wins that Ohio State Michigan game in a couple of weeks there's no argument if Georgia is undefeated, one of the Big Ten teams is undefeated, FSU is undefeated, and Washington stays undefeated. Like, one of those Big Ten teams isn't getting in, and they're going to be the number 5 seed. You would think, is there any precedent that Washington gets overlooked undefeated just because of the Big Ten bias?
Yeah. I would do that myself because they're the last 5 Power 5 undefeated, right? I think Liberty and James Madison are still undefeated, but as far as Power 5 goes,
yeah,
I have to imagine if Ohio State beats Michigan, which I personally think they will, Washington will get in. If Michigan beats Ohio State, I think that Big Ten bias is going to come bite them in the ass and keep Washington out.
I think it would cause a lot of chaos, considering, I mean, we are a year away from a top 12 getting in.
But like, who does the Pac-12 have to fight with, or the NCAA have to fight with? There's a demolished conference next year.
Yeah, I get that. It's just I would have such a hard time even just dealing with that and watching that, honestly.
Personally, I would still watch it, but I would watch it in protest. That would absolutely piss me off. You see it with the SEC as well. But no, I at this point, I mean, I think Florida State looks really good. Washington, obviously, we kind of lost a little hope on them, but they're kind of crawling back. How we're talking, they're just playing kind of bluff football, but they really showed out this weekend. That's a game I'd really like to see. Obviously, one of those two teams, I believe, will be probably in the 4 spot. So I don't think we'll get to see them match up in a final. But those two teams are obviously on the outer edge of it. And I don't think Florida State's going to have an issue getting there because the ACC is just a giant dumpster fire right now after Duke and North Carolina lost out. I know Louisville's kind of clawing up to, I think they're 11 or something like that.
Yeah, I saw they're like 11 in the AP, and they'll probably move up again in the college football playoff poll when it comes out late tomorrow.
But they're on the same side of the ACC, I believe, aren't they? They won't even match up in the championship game.
I don't know how that works in terms of the ACC, because some of those conferences are they don't even look at those side of things, like in terms of conference versus conference. I know that the Big 12 just
they kind of just let it be the two best teams.
Yeah, because they do not break them into two sides in the ACC. So
okay,
it would end up being a matchup that you would get to see if Florida State gets through Miami, Northern Arizona, and Florida, of course. But,
right. So this is just depends on which side of the schedule you're playing this year, not which side of the conference. Okay.
Yeah. So Yeah, there's no breakdown in terms of west or east and north and south and all that stuff. So it would still end up being Florida State versus Louisville, which is interesting, which would be an interesting matchup. But one thing that I would like to point out with Louisville is they're just a much better team at home than they are on the road. So them going into a neutral field that will the Louisville fans will travel. They do have a good fan base, but
Yeah,
I would
we'd
still think
spoke of
they're
that
gonna have a hard
before.
time with Florida State.
But yeah, no, that question's been weighing on me for a little bit though, because I think if Michigan does beat Ohio State, either Florida State or Washington are going to get fucked, and I'd put 99-1 saying it's going to be Washington.
Yeah, that's just how it is. But I do think if there's 4 undefeateds, they're the teams that are in. I think that one way to also look at it is, Oregon ends up playing Washington. Oregon's not gonna make the jump here. I'm not gonna be surprised come tomorrow that the college football playoff poll after Alabama being LSU has Alabama jump Oregon even, just because of SEC bias. And they're going to want to make that final game of the year between Alabama and Georgia that much more of a big deal. But you're looking at that championship Saturday being absolutely crazy. I mean, I guess it's tough because you get the Michigan Ohio State game the week before, but you're talking Washington, Oregon, which I think that would be a Friday night matchup. Normally the Pac-12 plays their championship on Friday night. Then you're talking Alabama and Georgia, Florida State, Louisville, and then whoever wins the Ohio State Michigan game versus whatever dumpster fire team wants to come out on the side of the Big Ten.
Ohio, man. Ohio. Or I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa getting the win against Northwestern in a 10-7 thriller.
Real riveting stuff.
I'll just say that there was like 6 games, I think, that the Cubs played this year at Wrigley that had higher points scored, more runs scored than points scored in that Northwestern Iowa game from Saturday. So baseball beat football quite a few times this season. Speaking of baseball, welcome Craig Counsell to the Chicago Cubs. I woke up not too long ago to a flood of messages from all my friends about that, and I was just literally like, me not feeling well, me being sick, it was very just like, am I still asleep? Like, am I still like, what is going
Fever
on?
dreams.
Yeah, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I must be really messed up. But the Craig Counsell thing, unless pinch myself, no, that's true. So I'm not delirious yet, which is good. We'll see how I get in the middle of the night if I keep on flaring up this fever and shit. But yeah, it's honestly, it's crazy to even like we could sit here and debate all day long about how this is all gonna play out. I honestly hope that there's some type of crazy upset we see over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks to kind of keep us on our toes. Like, there is teams like I love watching Oregon play football. I want Oregon to be in the college football playoff more than any other team that's out there right now. And that's just my personal opinion. And I have a bet down that Washington wins a national championship. Washington will win me money because in week 3, week 4 of the season, I was like, Washington's the best team in the country. That sentiment for me has changed the more and more that I've been able to watch them play, because I don't really trust their defense. And I think that they won against Oregon because Oregon gave it to them via the coaching staff not being the smartest on the field that day, not taking anything away from the win itself. It's just the coaching aspect of the game was what really got Washington there. And
too many points left on the board in that game. I mean, it literally could have been a gust of wind at the wrong time, and Oregon is undefeated right now rather than Washington.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, it's crazy to think about it. But I mean, there's 7 teams right now that I'm looking at. The 2 1-loss teams being Alabama and Oregon, that all have the ability to get into this college football playoff. But I think Oregon's going to be the longest haul to get in there. They're going to need the most chaos out of all these teams in order for it to happen. Granted, them being Washington in the Pac-12 title game, they would end up getting in for sure, or they would end up jumping Washington for sure, and it would be hopefully, they would have to see. I think they would have to see Alabama lose in the SEC title game, and you would have to see Iowa beat Ohio State or something like that, or Louisville beat Florida State.
Final score 3-0 Iowa. Ohio
Yeah.
State 0.
Yeah, I mean, heck, the way that Rutgers Ohio State game went on Saturday there for a while,
It got
it's not
sketchy.
the craziest. Rutgers really, they came out there and they played a good football game. For the most part, they hung in there for a long time until Ohio State pulled away late. For those that were watching us on Saturday morning with me and Ross, I literally said at halftime, I expect us to be like 13-10 Ohio State, and then Ohio State to run away with it in the second half. It was 9-7 Rutgers at halftime, so not far off from what my prediction was. I said it would be close, and Rutgers had a chance there early in the third quarter to go up 2 scores, and a very I don't even know how to like put it into perspective, because it was just such a Tim Tebow like try in terms of a jump pass that ended up going for a pick 6, and the guy was like right there, and you're just seeing it like fall Ohio State's fault. And like you thought that Rutgers might come away with it, but it was just an errant pass that really just what did not need to happen, and it kind of flipped the game the opposite way. So Ohio State came down and scored. I believe they got the ball back and scored again. They went up 21-9. Rutgers came back down and scored to make it 21-16. And then Ohio State got 2 more unanswered scores, won the game 35-16. But Rutgers had the opportunity, just a really stupid decision there with that pass, especially when they drove all the way downfield. They were in the red zone. All they had to do was, they
defense tired.
Yeah, I mean, they could even kick the field goal, make it 12-7. At least you're not getting a flip the game around completely pick 6. It was
that kind of seems to be the story of Ohio State this year, though. I mean, I know what happened. Fuck me, now I'm blanking. With Wisconsin, obviously, it happened another time too. Maryland, where it's way tighter than it should be on paper. And then that second half, I mean, the Ryan Day adjustments or players just are a little more lively. They tend to run away with it late, but they always make a first half interesting for these just okay teams.
Yeah, I honestly was kind of kicking myself in the ass because I sat there and thought about it. I know I see all these sharps, as they call them, in terms of the guys that are looking at all the books, making all the bets and stuff. A lot of times you'll see them like go and pick a team like Rutgers +9 in the first half instead of like the whole game. And I'm like, man, I should really start looking at this stuff, because I would have nailed that one on the head. Like that, I was right there with that. I'm like, yeah, I think Rutgers will stay in for the first half. And maybe that should be the way that I approach some of the betting now. It's just, because when that first half went down like that, and I went on Twitter, and I don't know who it was, but I saw someone who did put Rutgers at plus whatever they were at for the first half only. And I'm just like, this really makes sense when it comes down to Ohio State, and the way that they tend to play football week after week after week is they don't beat down teams until it's the second half. That's when they play their best football. That's when the offense just starts to make all these big plays that they run away with the football. And
I mean, even earlier in the year, maybe like week 5 or 6, I remember watching that who was it, Northwestern Penn State game, and I think it was like 13s at half or 13-10 at half Northwestern's way, and I'm just like, that's fucking wild. Like, if you just threw $10 on Northwestern first half, like, points, no points, doesn't matter. That has to be a nice payout.
Yeah, absolutely. It's honestly just the way it's kind of been with a lot of the top tier teams. I think a big part of the reason why you see this so much in college football too is just not just so much second half adjustments made by coaching staffs, as much as it is just the talent gap in terms of 5 and 4-star recruits compared to the 2 and 3-star recruits that Northwestern's getting, for instance, in that game against the 4-star recruits that Penn State's getting. And it's just the talent level ends up taking over. Kind of the same thing. Like, you know, we sit there and we talk about USC's defense, but we know they got top recruits on defense. But why are they not able to pull away with the defensive aspect of the game and get better at it? So I think you have to kind of lay that on coaching, where I think on the offensive side of the ball, you can get away with your players being better than the coaching staff is. And that's why you see some of these teams pulling away in that aspect of the game. But Georgia's the same way. Georgia's defense always shuts down teams in the second half. They don't give up points in the second half. Ohio State doesn't seem to give up a lot of points in the second half. And that's what the good teams do. And that's why they're where they are at this point in the season.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely, I mean, you want to say a lot of it comes down to coaching, but you got to think like conditioning too. Obviously, these are all D1 programs that we talk about for 90% of the time at least.
Yeah.
And they're all, you know, I don't know what they go through. I'm sure some of it's pretty abysmal shit, nothing that I would want to do. But like you see these defenses just so tired. And obviously, you know, those 6-minute, 7-minute drives kill you. Those 6-7-minute drives, 3 and out, then right back at it, they kill you on your defense. But I mean, you got to think like, why can teams like Georgia and Penn State withstand those? And then you watch USC do it, and those guys just look, you know, they're faking injuries just to get a quick 30 seconds on the ground. Yeah. I mean, but that's where, like, you have Marvin Harrison Jr. on Ohio State running a 40-yard route, dropping the pass, running back to the line, and going out for another 40.
Yeah.
Like, that cornerback is gassed, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is over there looking like Superman.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot harder on the defensive end of the ball when you're chasing people around than it is.
Right. You don't get to set the tone.
Know where you're going.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's that's just something I always kind of thought about, like the conditioning. Like, I don't know, never enough conditioning. But let's jump on over to the game that I'm sure neither of us want to talk about. Let's make this shit show as quick as possible. Notre Dame back to being bad at football.
Yeah, I mean, terrible job of play calling the whole entire way through on the offensive side of the ball. I know that you were screaming for the offensive coordinator's head. I saw the Irish on tap page screaming for the offensive coordinator's head. I saw a lot of Notre Dame fan pages screaming for the offensive coordinator's head. That whole, like, it's just honestly like,
all right, 3rd and 9, backed up on our own 10. How about a screen pass? They won't see that shit coming. Like, did Matt Nagy put on a Halloween costume and come on down to South Bend?
I don't know, because I mean, he was having terrible play calling yesterday morning against Miami as well. I mean, I thought the Chiefs should have won 42-14, so he could have been at both games, honestly. Yeah. The way that it went down this weekend. But yeah, you know, a lot of it too. I feel like Sam Hartman has regressed in a lot of ways over the last couple of weeks. He just hasn't looked like the same quarterback as he did at the beginning of the season for the Irish. Not going to throw complete blame on him. You know, it's only as much as your play calling and everything else could give you.
This is obviously a different Sam Hartman than Wake Forest had.
Yeah. Mitchell Evans being out with the torn ACL, I think ended up affecting him a lot more than I thought it would. I thought with the tight ends that Notre Dame still has behind him, that someone would just slot right in and kind of make those plays that he makes, and that wasn't the case. So,
I mean, Mitch Evans is like a free credit on 3rd and mid.
Yeah, and
like you need to complete something, just find him over the middle somewhere, high percentage passing, you know, somewhere between the safeties and the linebackers, and Evans is there. So obviously you miss that connection. But what you're missing out of Hartman is the long ball. He doesn't get those downfield opportunities. And obviously he's working with a lot of very young receivers. There's a lot of freshmen in that receiving core. But, Gerard Parker. I definitely wanted to see his head on a pike.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not
was.
quite sold on Freeman yet. I don't think he is the problem yet, but sooner than later, Al Golden's doing phenomenal. He turned everything around after that Ohio State game.
Yeah,
But I would
I
love to
think.
see some changes on the offensive side.
Yeah, I mean, chalk it up to Tommy Reese leaving when he ended up leaving. Um, didn't expect that, but I mean, there was a lot of times where I was really angry with Tommy Reese over the last couple of years. So it's it's all whatever perspective you want to take it into. But I also got to sit there and just give credit where credit is due. Jeremiah Trotter was a monster on Saturday. He was everywhere. Didn't matter if it was in the backfield, didn't matter if he was dropping out into secondary. It did not matter what he made every correct decision. That
The
there was
game was only in like the third quarter, and the announcer was like, "Well, you might as well just give him the ACC Player of the Week."
yeah,
And
he,
I don't think anybody disagreed with that.
he was incredible that whole entire football game because every single time Notre Dame had the ball, that's the name that you kept on hearing from the defensive side. So kudos to him. Honestly, like I don't remember any player in terms of defense ever taking care of the Irish single-handedly the way that that guy did on Saturday. Um, I mean, I've seen some players in the SEC that have taken over games in years past defensively, but it was literally every freaking play. You're hearing
Just
Jeremiah Trotter, Jeremiah
glued
Trotter,
to the ball.
Jeremiah Trotter, and it's just I
And
honestly, what else can you say? They didn't stop him. They didn't block him. He did everything that he wanted. He had control over every player. He could have literally just said any player's name and be like, I'm going to run you over and then I'm going to get to your
yeah.
quarterback. I don't fucking care.
And that Maffa kid, the running
Yeah.
back, Will Shipley, who that guy is sitting on your bench all year. Are you kidding me? Hard-nosed football, running it down the gut. I mean, he lost that what should have been a bad fumble. Or should have been for Clemson, but Notre Dame did nothing with it.
Let's take it with a grain of salt, though, because Notre Dame's defense, after 2 weeks of looking like a team that could tackle, completely did
Forgot
not
how to tackle
again. I mean, there was some easy freaking tackles out there that they just left on the field, and it was just like, oh, okay, Notre Dame's back to not being able to tackle again. And I was sitting there saying in the freaking third quarter, I'm like, this game's over. And honestly, that was the worst fourth quarter I've ever watched. It was just Notre Dame's defense gets a stop when Clemson has the ball pretty much in their own territory, getting the ball at the 50, 40 every fucking time. And then the defense gets a stop. Clemson punts. Notre Dame gets the ball on their own 5-yard line. It happened on repeat
multiple times.
It was the most boring fourth quarter ever because Notre Dame couldn't move the ball from that end at all. I think
they got one first down in the fourth quarter. And they had a lot of opportunities in the fourth quarter as well.
Yeah, they got to 31 time, I think, the whole entire fucking quarter. And
I'm looking over the stats now, and Trotter did have 10 total tackles, 8 solo, 2 for loss, 2 sacks, 1 pick, 1 touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. In terms of what happens from here, Notre Dame's got a bye week coming up, and then I'll be at the game against Wake Forest for Senior Day, and then they go play Stanford at Stanford to end the season, and we'll see what bowl game they get. The one thing that could come out of it for them would be, they win the bowl game again, and Marcus Freeman goes to 2-1 in bowl games. So, and I won't chalk that first year completely up on him, just like because he kind of walked into being the head coach. But
yeah, it was just
game.
you're up like 28-7 on Oklahoma State, and you just blow it in the second half. And I mean, that's what you do when you're Oklahoma State. You're facing an inexperienced coach. You kind of have that edge over them, and he did all the right things. So I'm along with you. Don't quite blame him entirely on that, but
was it Oklahoma State or was it Oregon State? I don't know why.
It might have been Oregon State. It's orange. They're a state. State letters. I don't know. It's
Oh,
one or the
okay,
other.
yeah.
Who
They're
cares?
Orange and they're a state. That's good. That's
Xavier
good.
Watts, one good thing that came out of Saturday for Notre Dame. I believe he has 7 interceptions now, leading all of NCAA.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the main moment that I got up for was like, oh, there's Watts again. So
Like that was your 3 claps, like hell yeah, and
yeah,
that was the last of it.
they had me back in the game maybe like 2 times where I was like, okay, wait, this might end up being okay. And then I was pretty much negative the rest of the way.
They
But
honeydicked you.
yeah, I'll chalk it up to Jeremiah Trotter. Good for him. Congratulations to Clemson on getting the biggest win of their season after a down year. And one thing that Ross talked about on Friday was this was a big game recruiting wise. Like there's players that are debating between Notre Dame and Clemson, and players if they want to go there, which way the trajectory is heading. This could be a game that kind of changes that, with both teams neither being college football playoff teams this year. You know, the one thing that I am very, very thankful for with this game is that there is still just 4 teams making the college football playoff, because if
Right.
Notre Dame would have lost that game,
And you're out of the top 11 because
yeah,
the
I mean,
non-power 5.
if they
Be
won
taking
out this year,
a
they would be
toaster
top
bath.
12. Yeah, if they won out this year, they'd be a top 12 team. They would be in.
Yeah.
It's guaranteed to have happened. So it's honestly like, wow, that would have really sent me spiraling into a more negative mindset than I was already with it. Like I would have been
Right.
fuming, like how I would have been emotionally wrecked like I was when they lost to Ohio State, where when they lost to Clemson this week, I was just kind of like, yeah, all right. It is what it is. But
I don't know what time you ended up turning the TV off and heading for the Hawks game, but did you happen to catch any of that Kansas State Texas game?
yeah, I got to see it all.
Oh, the fucking ending. I wanted to put my head through a wall.
That was a field goal for Texas late that got them the win there, if I recall. But yeah,
I mean they went to OT and then Kansas State looked phenomenal. Their defense, they just shut them down. They ended up settling for 3. And then the first pass of Kansas State's ball, they rail it down for like 19 yards around the 6-yard line and did nothing with it the rest of the way out. What was his name? Howard. The quarterback looked pretty great.
Yeah.
330 yards, 4 touchdowns. But obviously, still no Quinn Ewers. Murphy played a decent game over on Texas's side, nothing outstanding, but I just don't understand the decision making in that game if I'm Kansas State. Similar to what we'll talk about in a little bit with Missouri and Georgia. But I just remember watching that game like, what are you doing? Just beating up my laptop because, Jackson obviously had the TV with cartoons.
Yeah, I had this game on, and it was one of those games where me and Ross were even saying that it was going to get some TV time, but it wasn't going to get all the TV time just because the Big 12 was so interesting heading into this game. And now the Big 12 is even more interesting because I don't know if you've looked, but now if the season were to end today, the Big 12 title game would be Texas versus Oklahoma State. So not the game that you would have expected a week ago or 2 weeks ago even, but Oklahoma now coming off back-to-back losses, one of them being to Oklahoma State, the other one being to Kansas. And granted, there could still be a lot of movement that ends up happening here in general. Texas does have TCU and Iowa State on the road the next 2 weeks, and then Texas Tech at home. Kansas being a 4-2 team that's moving up in the world. The one thing is Oklahoma State does have it pretty easy the rest of the way out. I just think Texas is a team that likes to find a way to lose games that they shouldn't. So I kind of like hold that little bit of, maybe Texas will still fall out.
Right.
And I kind of thought that I thought they were going to lose that game on Saturday as well. And it was something I talked about Will Howard is that I like the way that he plays and that he reminded me a lot of the old quarterback that was there for Kansas State, Colin Klein. And while we were watching the game, I got a text message saying, remember how you said that this quarterback reminds you of Colin Klein? And I was like, yeah. Well, it's because Colin Klein is the quarterback's coach at Kansas State.
Oh, there you go. Some mysteries solve themselves.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, well, now this makes complete and total sense because he's kind of playing a similar style. So yeah, very, very good win for Kansas State there. Obviously, a team that lost a very bad loss to Kansas State. If Kansas State would have ended up winning, you would have been talking about Oklahoma and Texas both not being in the Big 12 title game the year that they're leaving to go to
both on their bon voyage years.
Yeah, and I kind of still want that to happen in a way, just see somebody else get in there. I'd love it if it was Kansas.
Just a final fuck off.
Yeah, but we'll see how Texas handles those road games at the end of the year.
I did see a tweet earlier that someone said, I don't give a shit that Oklahoma is beating Oklahoma State head on 100 games to whatever it may be. But that final game that they're going to play is Big 12 opponents is locked in forever as an Oklahoma State win.
Yeah. One thing that I like, kind of like how Notre Dame has it with USC and Stanford and some of these other schools every year that Notre Dame always plays. I kind of feel like you gotta kind of have that Oklahoma State getting scheduled every year type game.
You'll think about that too as they're kind of maneuvering through their schedules. Like, okay, we have a bye week here, and then we go into Georgia or whatever it may be. So let's try and knock down this travel time, play a close game.
Yeah, I think that they'll end up playing each other. I hope every year kind of deal. I mean, that's the one thing that kind of like has been my negative about the whole conference realignments is that we're going to lose a lot of these bigger rivalry games just because teams that are rivals are not in the same conferences anymore. But if you could still put those games together, I think it's great for the game in general and keeps fan interest in general. I don't want to sit here and deal with a lot of these teams that, like Ohio State or Michigan this year, for instance, where Michigan didn't play any decent team in their non-conference schedule. It sucks to see that. And it's like, oh yeah, they're the best team in the nation, but they don't got to play anyone in their non-conference. Same thing with Georgia. They don't play anyone with their non-conference, and then they don't get anyone with their freaking conference schedule. It's like, yeah,
you're scheduling like Citadel and shit, but when you play on the west side of the SEC, like who do you have? Tennessee, Florida, like Jack Swarbrick goes out of his way. And I don't disagree with what he did or does for a little while longer as far as making schedules, because when you're playing independent, obviously you have to have so many ACC teams. But going out, scheduling those Michigan games, scheduling those Ohio State, Clemson games, the Bama games coming up in a few years, sure, it's a tougher strength of schedule, but you can't hold that over our head being Notre Dame fans telling us how we play shit teams. But like it's incredible how Bama and Georgia and these teams, Michigan, get away with playing nobody for 4 out of the 12 weeks.
Yeah, it's constant.
I mean, Michigan still hasn't played a team better than Rutgers.
Yeah, next week they play Penn State, and honestly, like Penn State, even though their offense has looked a little bit better over the last couple of weeks, like they don't scare me. Like at the beginning of the year, I thought Penn State was a lot better, but that was before I really sat down and watched them. Once I sat down and watched them, I was like, oof, this isn't that great.
You forget that highlights only show you the really good parts.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't get a lot of chances to watch the college football final because my sleep schedule is all messed up and nothing makes sense about my life, but it's still just like when I get the chance to see them, it's just like okay, yeah, this team's good after the first 4 weeks this season. And you actually watch a full game of theirs and you're just like, wow, they are very inept on offense. They are not good.
And you know, a team like when Michigan is going to play Penn State, they're going to do exactly what Ohio State did, and they're going to read those comeback routes, those quick over slant routes, because they know they're not going downfield, and they're going to be all over it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, get 2-3 picks, a lot of pass breakups, but I guess that's the way it goes when you don't throw the ball 20 yards.
True. We made that little comment when Penn State won last week on a deep ball from Drew Eller, and we were just like, "Wow, look what happens when you throw
Who
the
the hell
ball."
saw that coming?
That's crazy. That's wild.
Their
Notre
opponent's
Dame could have
defensive coordinator's like, what the fuck just happened?
Notre Dame could have took a little bit of that when they played Clemson this week, but whatever.
Did you see that sign at College Game Day that said something along the lines of Iowa should hire Matt Canada?
I did not.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that is
Inept to inept. Like, see ya, Brian. Hello, Canada. But so dive into Missouri, Georgia. That one kind of hurt my heart a little bit.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Missouri throughout the beginning of this season. I've thought that they're a really decent team, which they have proven to be this year. See how they come out next week when they play Tennessee after this loss against Georgia. But, Georgia came out there and they kicked an early field goal, took the early lead. Missouri showed a great ability to not give up those early points, which I thought could have gotten them in a lot of trouble as if they gave up a touchdown that first drive, but they held together. And then Missouri came right back, right downfield, scored a touchdown. Luther Burden made a nice play on a pass. Like they have two stud wideouts there at Mizzou. I know I don't know if it was Burden or the other guy, can't recall his name, who went down in that game. But losing that second wide receiver was definitely not something that helped Missouri in terms of this game, because having to guard both those guys seems to be a really tough task for a lot of schools this year. And I think it could have made a bigger difference in this game. But, Missouri scored that touchdown, got right back at them. Both teams are playing pretty good defense, going back and forth. I took the over on this game because Missouri scored 30 points in their last 5 coming into this, and Georgia always puts up 30 plus as well. And both teams really played tight defense. It was 10-10 at halftime, and Missouri even came out on their first drive of the third quarter and took the lead with a field goal, making it 13-10. And you're like, all right, this is pretty good. This is great. Georgia then 2 unanswered to end the third quarter, but after the 2 unanswered, Missouri came right back out and scored again to get the game.
Brady Cook.
Yeah, and you're sitting there like, now you got to come out there and get a stop. Like, this isn't impossible. Another team that's making Georgia work. Missouri's showing that ability to really contend and hang in there. And Georgia on that next drive after the Missouri touchdown kicked a field goal, so they were still only down 6 points, had an opportunity to score and take the lead. But
the red zone, the settling for 3 in the red zone really hurt them.
Yeah, their
running back, Connor Schrader or whatever his name is.
Mm-hmm.
Guy just runs hard-nosed football. He reminds me a lot of you remember Cam McDaniels from Notre Dame?
Yeah.
Super good-looking dude, long hair. Just kind of that shoulder down, run right through you, catch some passes. He was a lot of fun to watch. Brady Cook, like you said. And, they were making Kirby sweat. They were showing Georgia's sideline a lot, and that man was not happy the entire game.
Yeah, I think one thing that you got to do, granted, Missouri, you're coming in this game, you're ranked number 12, but Georgia hasn't lost a game in 3 years. One thing that you have to do in a game like this is you have to take that shot. You can't settle for 3 at some point in the game. Not knocking you for taking the field goals when you did to take the lead or anything like that, but you have to take your shot when you're playing Georgia, because if Georgia has the ball last, they're gonna beat you.
Yeah.
They're gonna find a way. If you give Georgia any opportunity, they're gonna beat you. That's just what they do. They're too well coached. No matter who they have on their sideline each game, Georgia is going to find a way to beat you if it's close, unless you take your shots. And that's the only thing that Missouri kind of failed at in this game is they had an opportunity late. They had an opportunity with under 5 minutes left in the game. They were there. Georgia
Yeah,
ended up
and that's conservative football, and we've seen a lot of teams this year get burnt with it, especially with the new clock moving. Oregon got burnt with it when the coaches took that loss against Washington. So you can't blame them there. Obviously, you want to see a little more, shots being taken. But I do not discredit them one bit for taking points, because points is how you win, and Georgia puts up a lot of them.
Yeah,
I know. I had mentioned those red zone stops. Obviously, you want 7 every time, but I think Missouri played a really good game of football. Came up a little short, and now I do officially think Georgia is going to remain undefeated for the rest of the year. I think they have Tennessee and then nothing.
Don't they have?
They have Ole Miss still, and then Tennessee.
Yeah, so Ole Miss is ranked number 10 in the college football playoff.
So they're going to lose.
Yeah, Ole Miss finds a way to look really bad in these big games. Their one loss this year is to Alabama. They had an opportunity there, but I kind of expect it to be the same way that it always kind of plays out here. I'm not going to put much faith in the Ole Miss, but we'll get into them again on Friday, or I believe Friday this week. We'll talk about that game and see if there is any way that we could find a way for Ole Miss to find a way to win that game. But I think it comes down to Georgia, Alabama, and Alabama might be the only team, unfortunately, that could find a way to stop Georgia. And that's just kind of how it is. I mean, I could see Georgia losing to
sad truth,
an Ohio State or a Michigan, but I mean, that's not the goal in terms of getting them out before the college football playoff. So, but we'll see how it kind of plays out in terms of that. I just, it's impossible to kind of pick against Georgia right now. Anytime that you think that they're going to possibly lose, it's just not even worth getting up for. So, Granted, it was a great game on Saturday. Kudos to Missouri and the season that they're having. I hope that they go out there and beat Tennessee, and I hope they finish the year at 10-2 and get into a great bowl game. They deserve it, but Georgia did what they had to once again. So we'll kind of continue to play it out. I know Georgia and Ole Miss will be one of the bigger games on the slate for Week 11.
Yeah, I admittedly haven't watched too much Ole Miss this year. I did watch that Tulane game. They looked phenomenal in that Tulane game in the second half.
Yeah, that was Week 1. So
was it 1?
Yeah.
I knew it was early. I never really paid too much attention to Ole Miss, honestly. But
I watched most of the game this week. Well, the Notre Dame game was on because I bet on Ole Miss to cover this week. So I had on the smaller TV until there was something else that was going on at that point that took my interest. I think it was Ohio State and Rutgers. I ended up flipping to that game because I didn't bet on the Ohio State Rutgers game, but I was just like, wait a minute. And then it got out of hand. But whatever game was close, I kept on flipping to on those other TVs. And the Notre Dame game got so boring that I started paying more attention to the other TV than.
Yeah. No, fuck. Now that I'm inside for the year, I haven't moved my garage TVs inside yet, just strictly because I'm lazy.
Yeah, I have,
my oldest doesn't nap anymore, so it's hard to leave him in here for 10 minutes while I go and fuck with wires and TV stands and mounts and shit.
I honestly, like, I would have probably been outside a little bit this weekend because it was a really nice weekend here, actually.
Yesterday was really nice.
Yeah, but with me being sick and me probably being partially, there's a lot of reasons why I'm feeling sick over the last week and a half to 2 weeks, so I just can't kick anything. But I think the main reason one of the main reasons is I can't handle weather change really well. So I think with how cold it was all week last week, where we even had snow within the last week or two.
Yeah. What was
Then
that?
sitting
Thursday
there,
or Friday?
yeah, and yesterday was like 65 degrees, and my body just does not like dramatic temperature change at all. And this has been a really weird couple of weeks for us weather wise. So I
Yeah.
avoided going outside
That's
just
how
because,
Bailey and Jackson are. It's terrible.
yeah, it's not fun for me either. But um, yeah, I'm inside for the year, that's for sure.
I
unless
would have
unless
been out there this
day
weekend
coming up.
if I was childless, but
Yeah,
I'll be fine. I could go to work with the sniffles. I can't let my kids get sick though.
yeah, I gotcha.
But at that point, you want to jump into our non-power fives? I know James Madison and Liberty, the only ones undefeated after the air raid failed.
Yeah, Air Force, what the hell happened? Um,
Army, man, come
yeah,
on.
like I couldn't believe, like I just kept seeing, I saw 10-0 Army. I'm like, oh, it must have been a weird start to the game, whatever. And then I saw 20-0, and I'm like, okay, that's not good because I know with these spread option offenses, you don't put up a lot of points normally. So being down 20-0, that seems like a tall task. And I think the final was 23-3. So Air Force's hopes of getting into a college football New Year's Six game is out the window. So we will not be talking about Air Force on this show anymore. So play the good
RIP.
fellas send off, and so long to the Falcons of Air Force. Um, with that, though, Tulane kind of takes a stranglehold on the college football playoff New Year's Six game. They were in it last year. It looks like they have a very good opportunity this year as well, as they just need to basically win out, because even if Liberty stays undefeated, I don't think Liberty will jump Tulane, just because there's Tulane was so good last year. There's a lot of like
I think
around them.
there's a big divide between the two. Not so
Yeah,
much between James Madison and Tulane, but Liberty and Tulane. Yeah.
yeah. So, but one thing to point out, Tulane this week played against your boys, the East Carolina Pirates. Um, and East Carolina had the lead on them. And East Carolina has one win this year. They are bad. They are awful
Yeah.
this season.
They
And
cover spreads though.
um, Tulane beat them 13-10. Tulane got them late
A
with an
high
eight.
scoring game in the state of Iowa.
Yeah, but not a good showing for Tulane, honestly, which was, it does kind of make me interested to see where they end up in the college football playoff poll come tomorrow, and where, if at all, if Liberty is on the list, because I think Liberty would be the number two. It's either them or Fresno State at this point. And I know Toledo is getting quite a few more votes as well. But Fresno State had a tough opponent this week. They played Boise State, ended up getting the win against Boise State at home. Ross made a good little point out on the show on Saturday that they kind of, whoever seems to be the home team in the Fresno State Boise game gets the win. And Fresno State went out there, did their job, got the win at home. Boise State kept it close, but not really close. Like it was pretty much a 2-possession game most of the way through for Fresno State. Always keeping that one little score above them. And Liberty staying undefeated as well. And then the other team that's kind of in the mix right now is Toledo. As you know, it is that time of year. It is MACtion football throughout the whole month of November until we get to Thanksgiving. You will see the MAC teams take over on Tuesday and Wednesday nights on your ESPN channels. And I think CBS Sportsnet normally gets one. So with that, Toledo didn't have a game since last Saturday, but they will be playing Eastern Michigan this Wednesday. So holding out hope for Toledo to get into a college football playoff or college football New Year's Six game. Check them out on Wednesday night against Eastern Michigan. But
I
yeah,
love falling asleep to MAC football.
I
Throwing
wish
on a
that,
TV, low volume.
I wish that I was not working overnights. Honestly, I really miss being able to just stay in and watch these sports at night. Maybe that's the reason why I'm sick, is because I'm missing my Maction, and it's just making me like very ill on the inside. I
Your
don't know.
body's become too accustomed to it.
Yeah, it's just you're
Action
used to it.
withdrawals.
Hey, look at that. Chelsea with a huge upset of Tottenham today. That's great. Good to see. A little
Big
soccer
Chelsea
action.
FC guy.
Good shit. And with that, we could go into what the new AP is saying right now. The new AP,
all very subjective.
yeah,
You'll
I mean,
look
it's
at a
not
different list. We're not telling you lies. There's just a million of them out there.
Yeah, the college football playoff right now, that's the main poll. That's what we're going to go off of for the rest of the year. But it's just something interesting to kind of see the comparisons in terms of where the AP and the coaches polls are in comparison to that. And I wanted to kind of see this week if the AP would straighten itself out to look more aligned with what the college football playoff was saying, just because one thing that I noticed with the college football playoff was that a lot of the teams that were one-loss teams or two-loss teams, the one-loss teams were always above the two-loss teams, where it wasn't that way in the AP. Like Notre Dame was ahead of Louisville in the AP, and LSU was ahead of Louisville in the AP. Louisville was ahead of both of them in the college football playoff. So with that, big difference between the two, Georgia's number one. Ohio State is number one in the college football playoff, but in the AP, Ohio State's number three. They're not even ahead of Michigan. But I think a lot of that has to contribute to the fact that we don't know what's going on with Michigan, and no one wants to see Michigan in the college football playoff if there's a chance that it is just going to get taken away from them anyway.
Yeah. I keep waiting and waiting and waiting for news. Obviously, they fired the guy, I don't remember his name, but the guy actually going to the games and recording. But something is going to happen. Is it going to happen before January? We don't really know. We all hope so. I know Ryan Day, I believe, is being sued by the University of Michigan, or maybe it's by Jim Harbaugh. But as we keep waiting for this to change, suspensions to be handed out, fines to be given, firings possibly. I don't think they're really going to be touched as far as the AP is concerned. That might look a little different with the college football playoff poll, but from the list I'm looking at, I don't think that changes until one of those teams loses.
Yeah. We already kind of debated it a lot at the beginning of this show. Like, where do these teams go in terms of the Oregons of the world, the Alabamas of the world? And, it's going to be a much better judgment to kind of see. Like, I don't think Texas is ranked ahead of Alabama come this week in the college football playoff poll. I don't think Oregon is ranked ahead of Alabama in the college football playoff poll this week. Right now in the AP, Oregon's at 6, Texas is at 7, Alabama is at 8. Everything else from there, like Penn State being 9, Ole Miss being 10, Louisville being 11, that all makes sense. That's probably where it's going to be. The 2-loss teams, the Oregon States, the Utahs, the Tennessees, the Oklahoma States, the Missouris, the Oklahoma, they're all subjective right now. That could all be very switched around. I know that can mean a lot to these teams in terms of who gets to play a New Year's Six bowl game. So it will be kind of interesting to watch how some of these play out and how these one-loss teams goes down. Like we already stated, Ole Miss is playing Georgia this week. Good chance that Ole Miss is a 2-loss team at the end of this week. If Ole Miss ends up beating Georgia, then we're going to be having a fun show on Monday to talk about next week because everything's going to be all messed up, which is kind of what we want. We prey on chaos here. So, but yeah, then from there, like you got these 3-loss teams, these lower level teams like Tulane, the James Madison, which one thing I did want to point out with James Madison is the way that it currently looks. James Madison will get to play a bowl game because there's not going to be enough teams that are 500 or above in terms of the rest of college football to fill all the crazy amounts of college football bowl games we have. The one rule that gets James Madison in is if there's not enough teams to fill all the other bowl games. And I think the matchup that I did see, one of the ESPN writers projecting, was James Madison versus Liberty. So if we get
That'd be a fun one.
If we get a James, and it would be like one of those December, like 17th, 18th December.
One of the earlier slated ones.
Yeah. I think it was like the RNL New Orleans Bowl or whatever. I don't care. Like we get a decent bowl game.
Chili's 2 for $20 bowl.
Yeah, whatever. If we get a decent bowl game between two teams that might be undefeated, come that point early in the season, I think that's going to be some must-watch television because those teams.
That would be a lot of fun, especially no other like bowl distraction with it being an earlier one.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
That would be a lot of fun. If Clemson ends up going just 500 and Notre Dame was the reason that they missed the bowl and James Madison doesn't get in because of it, I'm going to lose my shit.
Yeah, I mean, big Dukes guys around here, but
love them.
They just deserve to be able to play in a postseason game after 2 seasons of being this damn good. But we'll see how it plays out for them.
Does their DT still lead the league in sacks?
I am not 100% sure on that.
I know he was the past 2 weeks. I don't know if he still is after Saturday.
We're just going to say yeah.
Write it. Notre Dame falling all the way down to 22 on this list, 10 spots. Whatever. I did see them on one list, like 18. I saw them at 23, saw them at 20. Wouldn't be surprised if the college football poll took them out entirely.
Yeah. It's all whatever at this point. I don't
care. No, I think I made my final Notre Dame is bad at football tweet for the year because I'm just kind of defeated. I'm like a deflated balloon. Like there's just nothing left for me to give or want or enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm going to the game in 2 weeks, and I'm gonna more or less just enjoy the atmosphere of South Bend.
Right. Enjoy the bookstore, enjoy the bars, you know.
Yeah. We have 2 free nights at the casino there. So the 4 wins, we got 2 free rooms for 2 nights. So Friday and Saturday night will be at the casino. I think there's some like Chippendales or something going on Saturday. So Nikki and Sam could go watch that while me and Chris probably lose all of our money.
All your money.
So, but
we
that's
need more money for the strippers. Nope, all of it's gone.
We'll be enjoying the casino for the most part, but you know that'll be we'll find a way to make it fun for us either way.
Well, you heard it here first. The following Saturday, keep an eye on CFB on Tap Twitter for some live Chippendale updates.
Yeah, there it is. We'll kind of change it around. With that, Liberty coming in at number 25. We do want to point that out because Liberty is now in the top 25 for the AP, and Fresno State coming in right behind them, tied for 26 with Kansas State at 73 votes, and the other team that we've been talking about, Toledo, has 25 votes now. So they're moving up there. We could be seeing some craziness in terms of the college football.
USC, Air Force, UCLA, Iowa, and Duke, some other teams just outside. I really wanted to talk about Arizona in 23 in the 23rd spot. Good for them.
Yeah.
That's a tough, nitty-gritty program. Like, where the fuck did they even come from? But you know what? Good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. What Arizona's been able to do for the last few weeks of the season, really just kind of picking apart some of the top teams in the Pac-12, a very strong conference this year, completely shocking a lot of people with it. I mean, if you were expecting Arizona to do this a couple of weeks ago, you could have gotten them at they were like plus 20 in some games. You could have won some huge money lines on this team. So good to see for them. Outside of that, we kind of go over what happened in the betting world. Wild week for me. I honestly just in general, like the start of the day was so damn bad. I had the Notre Dame -3. I had Nebraska -3 as Nebraska lost to Michigan State somehow. I had Mizzou and Georgia over. 3 losses. And then I had Ole Miss -3, and that pushed. So those were the first 4 games of the day for me. I was 0-3-1. You want to know how I ended the day? 5 straight wins.
Hell yeah.
5 straight wins.
Love to
James
see it.
Madison, New Mexico State, Kansas, Washington, Fresno State, all 5 of them covered. Got 5 wins, moving the record now to the year to 48 and 50.
We're getting back to 500.
We're almost there after 2 weeks of being positive, after like 4 straight weeks of being negative.
If you could finish the season even one bet over 500, that's a win. It's been a roller coaster, but it's a win.
Yeah, and I also put together a nice little parlay on a Saturday night that had the Fresno State game in there. I had Arizona at +3. I had Washington at -3 in there, and then there was one other game that I threw in there for the late slate that ended up covering pretty easily for me. So, and that was like a $24 bet or something to win like 280. So, a very positive week overall. I've hit 2 pretty big parlays in the last 3 weeks. They're coming in night shift games, so I think the prime time is where it's at for me. I'm not making good choices for the 11 a.m. games
in daylight.
Yeah, like
got it.
I mean, I work overnights. I'm not a day person right now, I guess.
I continue to stay in the black after a couple bad losses. I'm back with a couple wins in a row, improving me to 7-2. What week did we just pass? 9?
Yeah, 8-2.
8-2. So I know I texted you in the morning. I texted you. I was like, hey, I want this game. You're like, I already have that game. Okay. And I went with my backup option, and I wasn't feeling too good about it. But all 3 of the picks that I was like debating all morning all did end up covering. I know Kansas getting points at Iowa State. I think Kansas won that straight up. Houston was getting 3 from Baylor, I believe, and Houston won that straight up. And Missouri +15. They lost by 9, I think.
Yeah.
So
they were all very good. I debated about putting Missouri +15 on my card, but I was just like, this feels like it's one of those games where Georgia gets up for it and kind of possibly steamrolls them, despite how good I felt about Mizzou all year.
Well, Kansas was like my breadwinner. I had so much confidence in it.
Yeah,
but I was sitting there like 15 points is over 2 scores. One bullshit touchdown at the end of a game for Baylor, like that UCF shootout that we saw a few weeks ago. I was like, 3 just is a little uncomfortable for Houston. I know you had mentioned that you thought the game was going to go entirely different. So I was cool with my +15. I thought it pretty much was going to go how it went. A 9-point difference was pretty straight. I was thinking more along the lines of 13 or so, but I'll take it. It's a win. So
yeah, definitely. Kansas just seemed like a really weird bookmaking decision. I know
Iowa State has an elite defense.
Yeah,
but we've seen them on offense all year. It's a very Penn State-esque type of situation they've got going on.
Yeah, and they couldn't beat Iowa either earlier in the year. Took them in that game. I just no faith in Iowa State. Iowa State was on my blackout year.
That was a Cade McNamara game, though, wasn't it? Wasn't that one of the first couple weeks? So they were, averaging probably 22 rather than 18.
Yeah, maybe. They were pretty pumped about putting up over 20 points a couple of times. So, but yeah, that seemed like an easy one. That I honestly thought I was should have probably put Kansas money line on that one the way that I was thinking about it, but is what
I
it
was
is.
sitting at work with my buddies scrolling through Bleacher Report looking at spreads, and I was like, holy shit. He's like, what, something wrong? Like something going on in the plant? And I was like, no, Kansas +3? I got to get in on this.
Yeah. Yeah, so overall things are getting better around here. We're making money, so right now would probably be the best time to join us. You know, the only other thing that I got is I really had a hard time picking a Maction pick of the week. You know, I'm like Central Michigan +3 against Western Michigan, but it's at Western Michigan. I don't think I want to pick against Western Michigan again. So for Wednesday, I'm gonna go with Bowling Green, 5-4 this year, at Kent State, 1-8 Kent State. Bowling Green covering -8.5. We'll take that for the Maction pick of the week as and I'm sitting here and now I'm kind of like, man, maybe I want to do Eastern Michigan +19 against Toledo. Like that's a lot of points for a Maction game. So yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna take the Bowling Green game. I might. They normally do put out a profit boost of if you do 3 games, 3-game parlay of the Maction games on DraftKings. So I would say that if I had to choose 3 of them, I would do Bowling Green -8.5, Eastern Michigan +19, and then possibly Western Michigan -3 over Central Michigan, just because Western Michigan at home is just different type of team. They handled Eastern Michigan pretty well last week. So we'll kind of see how it all plays out. But if anyone that I want to lock in, we'll go with the Bowling Green boys right now. Our friend Kevin Winters went to Bowling Green. So shout out to Kevin.
Did Kevin really go to Bowling Green?
Yeah, he's a Bowling Green kid.
No shit. What state is Bowling Green in?
Ohio.
Okay. I think I knew that.
Yeah, and Kevin's also a Chelsea fan for soccer, kind of the reason why I became a Chelsea fan.
Also a reason why I became a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, so
Kevin, I always chose Chelsea in FIFA when I was a kid, but he really reinvigorated my EPL fandom.
Yeah, same here. I never really cared too much, and then, well, I made some random bets and won thousands of dollars. I was like, man, soccer is easy to bet on. So ever since I started to learn the game, not as easy. Like I should have stuck with not knowing shit about soccer because I'd probably be rich right now. But
yeah, now you're over here fucking reading glasses on, looking at all the sabermetrics and shit, and you lose every bet. But you're like, okay, I like them. Ooh, Tottenham's a fun name. All right, $5 on them.
When I woke up today, I was like, all right, I know Chelsea plays at 2. I'll be up for it. Maybe I'll throw some money on it. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to because they're going to lose because they're playing Tottenham. And here they go. They upset Tottenham 4-1 today. So that's awesome to see. So shout out to Kevin. We'll tell him that mention him so that he watches this episode. But other than that, I kind of want to get some more rest before I go to work since I'm feeling like shit. Hopefully I don't pass out on the job tonight and get through it. It is our busy season, so every night is hell. But yeah, other than that, I am out of things to talk about. I think that we will be on Friday this week. I'm hoping we'll be on Friday this week. Last week we had to change it last minute because we're working 16-hour days at work and I wasn't going to get any sleep at all and kind of contributing to my sickness. But hopefully this week's a lot easier, maybe 13-hour days, 14-hour days instead of 16-hour days. No, whatever.
Just feels like you never leave, right?
Oh, no. During the week, I live there. I mean, I come home and it's just like, especially last week, I'm like, I don't even have time to like put on a television show just to unwind. It's just you put on a TV, you eat your sandwich, then whatever breakfast sandwich I get, or at that time I freaking could go get regular freaking tacos and burritos at 11 a.m. So
ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, whatever I was eating, and then instantly after you eat, you're done. So
that was me yesterday. I had Ron and his girlfriend Katie over Eric came over, me, Bailey, and the kids were just watching football. And the time change kind of fucked everyone up a little bit, and it was dark out at like 5:30. And I ordered pizza, and then we all ate, and then like 20 minutes later, like, kind of tired. I kind of want to go home now. I'm like, good, because I kind of want you to go home now.
Well, I had Joey and Michelle sitting here with us. We ordered Grisano's Pizza Puffs, and I would say about 20, 30 minutes after we ate the Pizza Puffs, Michelle was just like, are you ready to go home? And I was just like, yes, you guys get the fuck out of here, please.
Bye.
And me and Nikki were sitting here watching the Blackhawks game, and then the night game was on, and I took like about a 45-minute nap during that and woke up, and then I proceeded to stay up until 3 a.m. watching a TV show that I found that is very interesting. Found on NBC. Watch it. It's awesome. Crazy awesome story. Yeah. It has Mark Paul Gosselaar in there. He's actually he's the bad guy in the show. But
spoilers.
In a way, he's the bad guy in the show. Well, it's crazy. It's a crazy show. Like, it's literally like this girl was abducted by Mark Paul Gosselaar's character when she was a child, and she ended up escaping. And years later, she runs like a facility to help find missing children that other people aren't looking for. But the way that she finds the missing children is because she abducted her earlier abducted and forces him to help her find the people that have been abducted by other people. It's
got some weird Dexter shit going on.
It's awesome. It's a crazy good story. I watched the first 5 episodes last night. I couldn't fall asleep. I took NyQuil and stayed up for 2 more hours. I was just literally like, I'm like, I can't stop watching now. So
Bailey and I are still on our scary movie kick. So like we watched like Nope, which I thought was great, but I thought it was probably the worst of like the 3.
Yeah.
Like, not a bad movie. I just thought Us and Get Out were better. We watched that Smile movie. That was creepy as shit.
Me and Nikki watched that last week too.
And then we're still on our Scream kick. I think we're on like 4 or 5 right now. Like, we've made it to the Jenna Ortega screams. But like, I keep falling asleep. Like, not on purpose. I'm just so tired. I'm laying on the couch and I start snoring. And Bailey's like turning the PlayStation off. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm still awake. So like, I got up like exhausted. I went to go make some popcorn just so I had something to eat so I could like finish the final 40 minutes of the movie.
Last week when I was like, because I was sick at the beginning of last week too, I was up in the middle of the night and I watched the last hour of Scream 2, and then Scream 3 came on, and I knew I was telling you that I don't like Scream 3 so much, and then I ended up watching all of Scream 3, and I was like,
I didn't hate it.
Worst. It's not terrible. Like,
it was it was her brother, but didn't know it was her brother type of thing.
Yeah.
It was weird, but like, it's a slasher movie. I mean, they're not meant to have the most, I don't know, the best storylines, I guess you want to call
it. We need to do a pop culture show for On Tap because we get carried
this has been College Football On Tap with movies.
All right, we're gonna leave the show now. We'll get back to you on hopefully Friday afternoon. With that, this has been College Football On Tap, brought to you by the On Tap Sports Network. Always get in the comments, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I don't know if we got to 1,000 yet. I hope we did, but if not, try and be number 1,000. Other than that, have a good week, y'all. Enjoy it.